To another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 22, verse 1. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So, Surah 22, Pilgrimage, Al-Hajj, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. O people, you shall reverence your Lord, for the quaking of the hour is something horrendous. The day you witness it, even a nursing mother will discard her infant, and a pregnant woman will abort her fetus. You will see the people staggering as if they are intoxicated, even though they are not intoxicated. Guys, can you please mute? Okay, thank you. Okay, so God willing, I'll continue reading. The day you witness it, even a nursing mother will discard her infant, and a pregnant woman will abort her fetus. You will see the people staggering as if they're intoxicated, even though they are not intoxicated. This is because God's retribution is so awesome. So, this kind of chapter, starts with, giving us a good reminder about the day of judgment and how that's going to look like, and how the quaking itself is going to be something that's so horrendous. I mean, that's just, we're talking literally just the beginning, right? And even the quaking, when it happens, we know that the earth and the sky, the universe, the first universe, it cannot withstand God's physical presence. So when God physically comes, or even the process starts, everything's going to start destroying itself, and it's going to be, as it says, it's going to be horrendous, right? And it's going to be so horrendous that even a nursing mother will discard her infant. So we know the bond between a mother who nurses a child, she will never, it's biologically programmed by God this way, that the woman takes intimate care of her baby, and, while the baby's there, she's taking good care of the baby. And this is going to be such a crazy situation that she's just basically going to drop the baby, right? And this is just to give us an idea of how it's going to be like, psychologically for people. Pregnant woman will abort her fetus, okay? And, so it's like, out of shock completely, she will abort the fetus, it's like literally, if you want to put it in, this is a very nice way of putting it, but if you want to, be more graphic, people are going to probably defecate also, it doesn't say that, but a pregnant woman aborting her fetus, you can be sure that, people would do that as well, right? Or if they don't, it's just allegorical, but it sounds like, it will probably happen, right? And God says people will look like they're intoxicated, it's like when people are in such severe shock that they will seem like they're drunk, like they wouldn't, it's like you shock someone so much that, there's like they're losing consciousness, they're just completely disoriented, they don't know what to do, they can't figure out anything, they can't make any, proper judgment or anything. It looks like the person is drunk, but it'll just be, everyone will be in such severe shock, and rightfully so. And God says this is because God's retribution is so awesome, so this is just giving us a little bit of a taste of how it's going to be like, so we should be mindful of that, as we think about the hereafter, as we go about our daily lives, to worry about the hour. And then verse 3 says, among the people there are those who argue about God without knowledge and follow every rebellious devil. It is decreed that anyone who allies himself with him, he will mislead him and guide him to the agony of hell. This is a fact, there are people who mislead other people, who argue about God without knowledge, and follow every rebellious devil. I mean, we have seen people, we see people all the time who argue about God without knowledge, without any guidance, and they think that they're doing good, and they just do it they just take it in vain, like they take it so lightly, and they're following Satan, right? And God says that anyone who allies himself with him, he will mislead him and guide him to the agony of hell, and guide him in such a undetectable manner that he will have no clue that he's being led by Satan through all the false promises and lies, until he actually ends up in hell. That's just God's system. You just go through that rabbit hole, following Satan, and then you just end up in hell, right? You just go from one end and come out of the other end, basically. Without realizing what you have done. Once you make yourself deserving of being led astray by Satan and being brainwashed, it's basically very easy for Satan to just lure you in and just get you to where he wants you to be, which is hell. Verse 5, where did we come from? O people, if you have any doubt about resurrection, remember that we created you from dust, and subsequently from a tiny drop, which turns into a hanging embryo. Then it becomes a fetus that is given life or deemed lifeless. We thus clarify things for you. We settle in the wombs whatever we will for a predetermined period. We then bring you out as infants. Then you reach maturity. While some of you die young, others live to the worst age, only to find out that no more knowledge can be attained beyond a certain limit. Also, you look at a land that is dead, then as soon as we shower it with water, it vibrates with life, grows all kinds of beautiful plants. This proves that God is the truth, and that he revives the dead, and that he's omnipotent, and that the hour is coming, no doubt about it, and that God resurrects those who are in the graves. So these verses, praise be to God, are a good reminder for us to reflect on our creation. And we reflect on our creation so that we can be certain about resurrection. The thing is, if people have doubts about resurrection and they actually think that it's impossible, God says, just reflect on your creation. And really, if you just think about it, logically speaking, right? God says he created us from dust, talking about creation in this world, first human being was created from clay, right? So that was the first creation. Then subsequently, our creation was repeated by us being created from a tiny drop, right? If you study the creation of the development of the fetus and how a child is born in the mother's womb, all those incredible stages, you cannot explain them in any other way other than the fact that God is the one who's controlling it. Everything has to fall into place in the right way. Everything has a balance, right? It's like you have a lock and you have a key, right? So the right thing has to go fit into the right spot for something to happen, right? They have for a reaction to occur and something to develop, the things, the processes, are supposed to match. And that happens for everything that God has designed, right? So, for example, if it's, let's say you try to mate a dog and a chicken, it's never going to happen, right? And so why do people think that life is just happening on its own, for example, right? And so everything, the dog and the chicken is just like an example, right? But I'm saying even at the molecular level, right, this is how things happen, right? When you look at cell division and everything else that happens, all the protein synthesis and everything else that takes place, all the nerves that are formed and every other reaction that happens. It's all like very, very intricate and mathematical, and everything has to happen in a very, very specific order, right? And so if we reflect on all of that, that whole process takes place in the right order for us to be born in this world. Who can do that? If God is doing it every single day as we speak, then there's no hassle for him to resurrect us on the day of judgment. So we just have to reflect on that and understand that nothing is impossible for God. I mean, He's the Creator, and the Creator can create anything, and He can repeat it whenever He wants. So we have to be certain about that. And then also God says that while some of you die young, others live to the worst age, only to find out that no more knowledge can be attained beyond a certain limit. So the worst age is, when you get older, right? And it's called the worst age, and nothing against older people, but it's just that your body obviously starts to deteriorate. It's not as vigilant as it used to be. It's not as resilient, and you're not as strong, and you're getting to weakness at the same time. Your brain stops maintaining itself, and it starts to grow weaker too, and your functions in your brain start to deteriorate as well. Your ability to learn and retain knowledge and memory and stuff like that, new information is gone, because your brain is sort of just kind of going to its ending stages, just kind of in the dying process, and so you cannot retain new information and knowledge and memory. I mean, it is there to some extent, right? But not as good as a young person. And it shows that this is God's work in the process. Obviously people can spend millions of dollars, and we know billions of dollars, or trillions for that matter, and they cannot reverse or stop this process from happening. And God says this proves that God is the truth, and that God revives the dead, and that He's omnipotent. So God revives the dead, and He's omnipotent. If you think about the dead, the liquid coming from liquid, a mixture, or from a drop, tiny drop, or from dust, this is pretty much, we are created from the dead. We are resurrected the same way. And so this is a proof for us to reflect on. And God says, and that also that the hour is coming. No doubt about it. And then God resurrects those who are in the grave. So this is a physical fact that we're all going to witness on the day of judgment. Common occurrence. Among the people, there is the one who argues about God without knowledge, and without guidance, and without an enlightening scripture. Arrogantly, he strives to divert the people from the path of God. He thus incurs humiliation in this life, and we commit him on the day of resurrection to the agony of burning. This is what your hands have sent ahead for you. God is never unjust towards the people, right? And so I love the subtitle when it says a common occurrence, because we can see how common it is for people to do that. Now everybody's able to express themselves very easily online with no hassle, and you see people constantly just arguing about God without any knowledge, without any guidance, even without an enlightening scripture. And as it says, arrogantly, they divert the people from God's path. And God says, thus they have humiliation in this world and humiliation in the hereafter. And this just reminds me, I didn't even want to bring it up, but just reminds me of an interesting interaction I had with someone last time who apparently yesterday, was apparently becoming a submitter and went through the mathematical miracle and stuff, and then ended up becoming Jew, and was just arguing and trying to basically convert me to Judaism, and just using nonsense. I'm like, what are you saying? What proof do you have that what you're saying is from God? You're following man-made books and scholars, and then I heard the most disturbing things. He's like, no, he says God promised us that we're His sons, and then He's going to make us partners with Him on the day of judgment. And my jaw dropped. I didn't know what the heck I just heard. It really threw me off big time. He wanted to be partners with God, and this is what Satan's promising these people, for example. I mean, that's just an example, right? How the absurdity. And I read to him all those verses, the vile vulgarity, that as an example to show them, like, do you really think this is from God? I mean, it was talking about, really graphic, almost pornographic stuff, that the verses that were injected into the Bible. And it was like, yeah, he says we can understand, the actual meaning. We can just see the meaning on the surface, but like, in other words, like only the sincere can understand what these really, really bad, like vile descriptions of women, disrespectful way of describing all their body parts and all this stuff in the most graphic way, like in the Songs of Solomon and other places in the Bible, which are injected by people. And it's trying to defend just every nonsense, without having any defense, and just taking it in a way, like not feeling responsible for what you're saying, even though you have no assurance from God that what you're saying is the truth, and you have witnessed a miracle, for example, and you're still saying these things. So really, when God says these things, like it's amazing, like how this whole thing even happens, to the point where the person becomes so shielded that it cannot see how silly and how stupid and how ridiculous they sound at that point when they're saying these things, but they have no clue, and they're being led by Satan. Like, so amazing, the whole system, how God has designed it. So God, when I continue reading verse 11, fair weather friends, among the people there is a one who worships God conditionally. If things go his way, he's content. But if some adversity befalls him, he makes an about face. Thus he loses both this life and the hereafter. Such is the real loss. He idolizes beside God what possesses no power to harm him or benefit him. Such is the real strain. So the fair weather friends are people who only worship God conditionally. Now we're here on this planet to be tested through both good times and bad times. We'll have abundance in provisions, abundance in health, wealth, and we will also be tested by the reduction, in those things, to see if we're only worshiping God when times are good, or if we're only worshiping God if times are bad, or not worshiping Him at all, or if we're going to worship Him under all circumstances. And the submitter who passes the test will be the one who worships God under all circumstances. But the fair weather friends, are more common than we think, right? Because imagine things are going your way, you're asking God for things, God is giving you things, and you're thanking God and so appreciative and everything. And then, you start to go through a different kind of test, and things start working the opposite, and you're asking God for things and you're not getting them, right? And so what are you going to do in that point, right? Or you want things to happen a certain way, and they're just happening the opposite way, right? And you're asking God to help you become, let's say, richer, and you're getting poorer, and you're asking God to give you better health, and you're getting miserable, right? So imagine, and it just is like just a regressive process someone's going through, and they're being tested, Some people maybe will, midway, stop. Some people will stop maybe at the lower end, but eventually, God knows where everyone is going to be, right? Because obviously God's not going to test us beyond our limits, but we're going to be tested with both the ends. And someone who, for example, objects or becomes unhappy at that time, becomes discontent with God, and discouraged or falls into despair, these are all signs of a person failing of the test and being a fair weather friend. And so God says they thus both lose this life and the hereafter. You lose this life because you're going to be miserable in this life. As a result, you're not going to have God with you. And hereafter too, because now you're not a submitter, you're an objector, and you have failed your test. So you lose. And it's very easy to fall in that category. People who complain, people who fall into the habit of complaining, and as the Messenger of the Covenant says, people get into a rut of complaining, and complainers complain when things are good, and they complain when things are bad. They just love to complain. They don't love to complain. I don't know if they love to complain, but they just get in a rut they get stuck in this rut of complaining. So we have to try to get out of it, right? As a submitter, we have to understand that a submitter is one who worships God under all circumstances, and one who submits cheerfully, So when you submit cheerfully under all the conditions, those conditions that you're being tested with, you understand and recognize, excuse me, you understand and recognize that you're being tested, and you don't give up easily during that time, right? Because you know that you have to worship God, and you're happy with whatever situation you're in. As a result, this is just a test. It's just a phase you're put through for a certain period of time. It could be a couple of years or a few years, depending on God's decision, based on His knowledge of us. And then, we will enjoy God's kingdom. We will enjoy perfect happiness in this world, right? But for someone who fails that test at that time when things are bad, he ends up giving power also to these things. Imagine you're driving on the road and someone cuts you off, and then you get upset. You get upset at the person who cut you off because you feel that your anger is building up because this person is the one who who is doing it, and you're getting upset. Oh, how dare he, he cut me off and he did this and he did that, but at that time we're not realizing that we're being put through a test where we're just giving this guy, all the power, maybe I should think about why this person is so angry or upset, or he's cutting me off like this. Maybe I did something. Maybe I said something to someone else that I'm just getting it in return or something like that, But either way, you make that person your God at the time because you're giving that person the power to think that they're the ones who did all this to you. And as a result, you're idolizing that person now. If you think anybody besides God can benefit you or harm you in any way, you're idolizing. And so you're idolizing that person at that time. And you're idolizing, as it says in the verse, he idolizes besides God what possesses no power to harm him or benefit him. And it says, such is the real straying, right? So the person who's doing that is actually being described here as someone who's straying. Also, I think I forgot to read the footnote for verse 5. It says, the Quran's mathematical miracle is based on the number 19. As it turns out, this number represents the Creator's signature on His creations. Thus, you and I have 209 bones in our bodies. 209 equals 19 times 11. The length of pregnancy for a full-term fetus is 266 days, or 19 times 14, Langman's Medical Embryology, 1985. Now, this is from 1985, right? And in the newer textbooks, they have changed this number to, I think, like 211 instead of 209, But the thing is that they're saying because certain bones are being counted here as one, where there are multiple bones, because they're fused together, they were being counted as one. And that's why they made them 211, But the thing is that there are other bones that they have counted that are still being counted as one that are fused together, So their system is not consistent, It seems like Satan didn't like the fact that there was 209 bones. He wanted to change it with the textbooks. And so he went ahead and created this thing where they said, no, it's not 209, it's 211. And if you see any of the textbooks now, they're all saying that, right? But if you study the bones, if you study those fragments that they're being disputed as multiple bones because they're being fused together, you'll see other examples of bones. They're also fused together, but they're not being counted in the same way, so they're not being consistent there. But we see here God's messenger, it was God's will that at the time that he came, that this was the agreed upon number that they decided to agree on, which was more consistent. And it goes in line with the fact, obviously, it's mathematically confirmed, so we know that that is the correct way. So sometimes it happens that, the scientists come to one agreement and then they change and they flip back and forth, so maybe they'll flip back, God knows, who knows, at some point in time. But right now, they have changed it, and they're saying it's 211, but in reality it's 209, and it shows God's signature on us, as God's creation. I think it's fantastic. If you think about yourself, every time you look at yourself in the mirror and look at your bones, you appreciate that. God is the one who created it, and not only that, and he created it in the best design, but that he also created you as a multiple of 19, So praise be to God, as his signatures on every single human being. So verse 13 says, he idolizes what is more apt to harm him than benefit him. Was a miserable Lord, what a miserable companion. And so obviously, he idolizes someone who's or something who's more apt to harm him than benefit him. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a form of idol, but one that is going to harm him now because he idolized it, right? Not that it has the power to do it, but then since you idolize it, it's going to harm you now. So you're worshiping an idol now by thinking about it. Consuming yourself with those thoughts, with that anger against that particular person or a thing, whatever it is. And now you're no longer a submitter, and your happiness is affected, and you have turned into an idol worshiper. So obviously, if you want to pass your test, we need to be careful and mindful of these things. And it's very easy to fall into those things at the moment, when you're being tested with it. So just good to remember that. Verse 14 says, God admits those who believe and lead a righteous life into gardens with flowing streams. Everything is in accordance with God's will. Happiness now and forever. If anyone thinks that God cannot support him in this life and in the hereafter, let him turn completely to his Creator in heaven and sever his dependence on anyone else. He will then see that this plan eliminates anything that bothers him. We have thus revealed clear revelations herein. Then God guides whomever he wills. Praise be to God. So, God is reminding us again that people who believe in God, people who believe in his omnipotence, people who believe that God is running everything, people who believe that everything is in accordance with God's will, as it says in this verse, they're the ones who will enter paradise and enjoy gardens with flowing streams, right? As the allegorical description of paradise. And God says, if anyone thinks that God cannot support him in this world and the hereafter, let him turn completely to his Creator, right? So if there's something in your life, or there's someone in your life that is bothering you to the point where it's affecting your happiness, then you've idolized them, right? And it's taken away from your happiness in this world, and most likely in the hereafter too. So God says, sever your dependence on anything or anyone that bothers you, and put your trust and dependence completely on God. Sever that dependence. Make sure that there's nothing in your life, whether it's your spouse or your children or your job or your financial status, your business, anything, whatever it is, that you feel that your happiness is dependent on. You need to really sever that dependence. Emotionally, psychologically, your happiness should not be dependent on those things. And if they are, you need to sever that dependence. And then you will see that this plan eliminates anything that bothers you. And I'm laughing because it reminds me of the verse that how the so-called Muslims, the Mohammedans, how they have translated this verse. It says, let him tie a rope or something to and cut himself off. It's like they're encouraging people. They're saying like, oh, if you don't like this, then just go kill yourself. And this plan eliminate anything that bothers you doesn't make any sense, right? So this is the actual. This is what the verse is actually saying: is just sever your dependence on those things, and this plan will eliminate anything that bothers you, and you'll have perfect happiness now and forever, as the subtitle says. So perfect happiness now and forever. I mean, a lot can be said about that, and I don't really have a lot of time to dive into the details of that. Maybe we can talk about it in the comments and questions. But God has promised us perfect happiness now and forever. And what that means is that once you have passed all your admissions tests, God guarantees you perfect happiness, perfect to the point that you will not even have headaches, as the Messenger of the Covenant has described it. You will forget, he said, what headaches even are. You'll forget what headaches are. So if you'll even forget what headaches are, you're not even getting tiny little headaches that you've forgotten what they feel like. That means that you won't have any tiny problems. You won't have any problems whatsoever. Of course, if you do something wrong at that time, you did something wrong as a pinch, as a reminder, you'll step out of God's kingdom to know that, okay, you know, something's wrong. Maybe I forgot something. And it's a blessing from God to let you know you've stepped out so you can come back into God's kingdom. But generally speaking, if you follow everything after the time that you have, become a proven worshiper of God alone, you will enjoy a perfect life. You know, you will enjoy perfect happiness, perfect peace, perfect health, no financial problems, no marital problems, no problems whatsoever, right? No health problems, no cancer, no AIDS, no disasters, things like that. Obviously, you will be tested definitely as part of your admissions test and for a while and with serious, difficult times. But once you pass those things, you know, God says, then there's no point in putting you through misery. Then there's only happiness, only joy and happiness, right? There's no putting you through disasters and you're putting you through severe testing circumstances, situations where you are, being put in miserable circumstances. There's no point in that, right? Because everything has a purpose. And once the purpose of putting you through these kinds of tests is done, then there's no point in testing you. Then you enter paradise. You know, in this world, you live a life that God has promised you that you're going to enjoy in the hereafter also, right? Of course, it's not literally the same, but, you know, in reality, your happiness and your state of being, the state of your soul and your mind, it's going to be like you're in heaven, right? The things of this world will not faze you. The problems of this world, people around obviously will be going through disasters, but you will be perfectly safe and you will be perfectly happy. And this is God's promise. God willing, continue reading verse 17. God, the only judge. Verse 17 says, those who believe, those who are Jewish, the converts, the Christians, the Zoroastrians, and the idol worshippers, God is the one who will judge among them on the day of resurrection. God witnesses all things. Do you not realize that to God prostrates everyone in the heavens and the earth, and the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and the mountains, and the trees, and the animals, and many people? Many others among the people are committed to doom. Whomever God shames, none will honor him. Everything is in accordance with God's will. So these verses are reminding us again that God is the only judge. There is no other person who's going to judge these people. Muhammad is not going to judge. Jesus is not going to judge, or any other saint for that matter, or any other imam, is not going to do any kind of judgment. Your judgment belongs with God, and God is the only one who will judge you based on what you did and what you believed, whether you're an idol worshiper or a Jewish or a Christian or a convert, anyone, no matter which religion you come from, there's only one judge. It's not like if you're a Zoroastrian, you're going to go to the head of Zoroastrianism or something like that, and then Christians are going to be judged by some pope or something like that, or some saint or Jesus, right? There's no such thing. Only God. And so people who are relying on these other idols to help them on the day of judgment, to tell God where this person should go, are making them the judge. And so they're committing idol worship, and God says there's no such thing. God is the only judge. And God says in verse 18 that do you not realize that to God prostrates everything in the heavens and the earth, even the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, and many people. Now the many people that it's talking about, these are the people that are submitters, that submit to God, right? God willing, you and me. But also it's talking about the earth. Now our bodies are part of the earth also, the trees are part of the earth as well, but the trees in themselves have their own life too. But our bodies are also part of the earth. So, we have no control of how our body works. For example, it's time for you to run to the restroom. I mean, if you could control it, you wouldn't have to excuse yourself in urgent meetings or during exam or something like that, right? You could just control yourself, or just whenever you want to, or like if you imagine going on a long trip or something, right? But we have no control of that. Imagine if, you get diarrhea or you get constipated or something like that. You have no control of your body. You get sick, you have no control of your body. Your body is not in your control. It's a submitter to God that is following God's laws. And if you could control your body, you'd probably be dead right now, because you would be overwhelmed by all the processes you have to make decisions on every single day. But only God is the one who's keeping us alive and making the body continue to do what it's doing, right? I mean, we wouldn't be able to even make sentences if it was up to us, because we wouldn't be able to control. We wouldn't have no knowledge about that, but we wouldn't have any knowledge about that. But God is the one who's controlling it. Praise be to God. God says everything is in accordance with God's will. And then also God says, whomever God shames, none will honor him. So just remember that, right? Also, this is true for God, for people in this life. God has honored the messengers and prophets and the believers, and God humiliates the disbelievers in this life and in the hereafter. And God says, whomever God shames, none can honor them. So the people who are going to hell, the people who are God's enemies, they're all going to go to hell. Everybody who's going to go to hell are God's enemies, and they're going to be shamed, right? And when they're going to be shamed, none can honor them, none can bring them out, right? This is God telling us that. And now the verse 19 onwards, it talks about hell. So let's pay close attention. Obviously, it's there for us to read it for a reason. It says, how terrible is hell, subtitle. Here are two parties feuding with regard to their Lord. As for those who disbelieve, they will have clothes of fire tailored for them. Hellish liquid will be poured on top of their heads. It will cause their insides to melt, as well as their skins. They will be confined in iron pots. Whenever they try to exit such misery, they will be forced back in. Taste the agony of burning. So it says here in the footnote, people who have insisted upon going to hell will inevitably complain. Had we known how bad this is, we would have behaved differently. They will be told that the horrors of hell have been pointed out to them in the most graphic, most symbolic terms. It should be noted that heaven and hell are almost invariably mentioned together in the Quran. And so then the later verses talk about the bliss of heaven. So God will admit those who believe and lead a righteous life into gardens with flowing streams. They will be adorned therein with bracelets of gold and pearls, and their garments therein will be silk. They have been guided to the good words. They have been guided in the path of the most praised. Surely those who disbelieve and repulse others from the path of God and from the sacred masjid that we designated for all the people, be they natives or visitors, and seek to pollute it and corrupt it, we will afflict them with painful retribution. Praise be to God. I mean, this is really excites me, and I tell you why. Because as I was having this conversation yesterday with that Jewish person, he referred to the Kaaba in the most derogatory terms, and really because I was talking to him about Abraham and how Hajj was supposed to be part of Hajj, and while acknowledging that, confessing that it was, he immediately went to insulting the Kaaba and just putting it down like, oh, you guys go and you worship the stone and something like that, and then he arrogantly left the discussion. And so God says they're the people who disbelieve and repulse others from the path of God and from the sacred masjid that God designated for all the people, and seek to pollute it and corrupt it. We will afflict them with the most painful retribution, right? So there's people that are repelling others from this in many ways, right? There's people that are repelling here by portraying to be believers or submitters or Muslims, and then there are other people who are just repelling other people by just saying that it's just ridiculous and all that. But either way, God says that those people will be in hell. But for the believers, God says they will be in paradise. They'll have, I mean, all the things you can think of in this world that you think are, signs of luxury and glamour and beauty. You'll have all those things and more, right? Because these are just the things we can recognize: pearls, silk, garments, etc. Bracelets of gold and pearls, right? I mean, these are all things that can be expensive in this world, and only the rich people can enjoy them and afford them for a limited time, right? But in the hereafter, these things and even better things will belong to the righteous people, anything that they want, and they will be with them, and they'll be theirs forever, and they'll be real, not temporary. And God says, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the people that are going to be in hell, inevitably. And how terrible is hell, right? I mean, you think about it, you try to wrap your mind around it, it is insane. Literally will drive someone insane in 2 seconds if they have to live in hell. Nobody can survive that kind of a torment, right? Just imagine, allegorically speaking, you have clothes that are tailored, that are made of fire, and you have to wear them. I mean, could you imagine that? I mean, you just put your finger, accidentally, you might have touched something hot like an iron or when you're cooking or something like that, and it burns. I mean, how terrible is that? And imagine your whole garment, your whole body being covered in something where it's completely burning, and then you have something being poured on your body that's burning your skin, and then you're being put in an iron pot. Imagine being boiled in an iron pot, right? Like tea or something, or boiling water. Imagine being in that situation, and then you can't leave. You're trying to come out, and you're being forced back in. I mean, this is the example, right? So can you imagine how terrible hell is? God is telling us to think about it, because on the day of judgment, when people will be in hell, they'll tell God, oh, I didn't know how terrible it was, and if we knew, we would be righteous. But God is telling us now in the most graphic terms, this is why God is telling us. This is not a joke. And so, this is a reminder for us that, we should think about it, because people are going to end up in this situation on the day of judgment. We don't want to be one of those people. So do the right thing, do the intelligent thing, use the time you have in this world wisely, and make the choices in this world wisely on how you're going to spend your time, who you're going to spend it with, what are you going to do with that time, and how you're going to respond to these situations in life, and what are your activities going to look like for the rest of your life, so that you're going to set a goal for yourself and be there. If your goal is to be with God and to avoid hell, then you'll work towards it, and every single day of your life should be dedicated and devoted to your goal as a submitter. So God willing, it will all count towards the day of judgment. We have to prepare and be mindful. This is why we're being reminded on a daily basis in the Quran, as we read the Quran, to think about it, right? So God willing, with this I will end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
God bless you and peace be upon you, brother. Good job.
Thank you.
What a beautiful study.
Yeah, mashallah. That was a really good study, good points on pretty much every verse and topic.
Yes, we got.
Yeah, it's very true. Kind of like you were just saying. God doesn't shy away from telling us these things, it's for our own good. Because sometimes, for people, there's a reason behind that too. To increase our awareness and reverence for His power and majesty, and not to fool around. And on the same token, He gives us a lot of hope to work for the best reward, paradise. And then something too, it's like, we know the disbeliever's destiny is going to be this, and it's so lowly. So, but also kind of like, I think it should push us more not to even want to associate with them or hang out with them or treat them, in any type other type of manner than what they deserve to be treated. Because we have it in the Quran, you should be stern with the disbelievers and the hypocrites. I was reading the Quran the other day and opened it up randomly and came across that. You know what I mean? So these are good reminders.
Yeah, just even at the starting, brother, with this surah, right? Like, God gives a beautiful example of where we came from, right? Like, says, hey, if you doubt resurrection, this is where you came from. You started from dust and all that fun stuff, right? And then it continues with this beautiful description, which undoubtedly comes from God, of how we were created in the wombs. Not only from the mud, from the origin of humanity, but brings it on in how we've been reproduced. And we see this in the Quran time and time again, where, God makes everything into pairs, how creation always has reproduction, right? And then gives the examples of how there's a continuity when it comes down to plants, right? And then God says, this proves that God is truth, and he revives the dead and he is omnipotent. And yet the hour is coming, no doubt about it, right? So we have all this. And then I love how it's absolutely after it's explaining those who have no proofs. We have all these proofs of God's omnipotent plan, about how God has created absolutely everything from nothing, right? And in incredibly detail. And then there's those who argue against it without any substance, without any proof. Praise be to God. His wisdom is even in how he explains things too. It's in everything. It's beautiful. Praise be to God.
Okay, anyone has any comments about the verses? Any questions?
Do you think that the continuity... Oh, go ahead. Sorry, brother. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. Verse 13, I was just wondering at the end, it says, what a miserable companion. So is that, I guess that could be referring to their jinn devils, because it says he idolizes what is more apt to harm him than benefit him. What a miserable Lord, what a miserable companion. So, if he idolizes a false prophet if he idolizes, some false god or some prophet, is that referring to that his companion, or his jinn devil that's inviting him to do such a thing.
Right. So I think it's referring to, referring to like fair, like when you have a situation when things don't go your way, you idolize besides God what possesses no power to harm you and benefit you. She's talking about that idol being your Lord and companion. At this point,
That makes sense.
right? Yeah. I think.
Yeah, it says, what a miserable Lord.
Yeah. So that could be anything.
Could it be a juxtaposition as saying a miserable Lord, as in you think something else other than God can help you,
Yeah,
and a miserable companion
that
as,
becomes your Lord, right? Yeah.
And then it's you following the companion, because we all have jinn companions, right? If you listen to somebody, that little voice inside your head without seeking refuge in God, right? And you follow the companion, like two people have like led you astray. This idol, whatever it may be, and then of course the companion that you listen to too. So like maybe it's kind of a double fool. Does that make sense?
It could be both. I mean, it could be referring to your companion too. I mean, your own.
Because if we were to follow idol worship, does that not mean that we listen to that jinn companion? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but but like also like it says, what a miserable Lord, right? So that Lord is that idol. It's talking about that idol, right? So.
So like people who follow their religious leaders or these sheiks or muftis and stuff, for example, they make them their god, and it's a miserable companion, miserable Lord. I mean, even somebody on Earth. I mean, obviously they're on Earth too, but I mean, like somebody in your close proximity, if you think this person can benefit you or some type, somehow help you, or they ask you for something, and then they think you're in control of getting them that thing. And I'll try to explain it to this friend I had a while back. Said, I can't do anything for you because I guess he was under the impression that I could, but it was just some verses come to mind when personally, I guess, just from stuff I've seen, and
I think it's so cool, like to me, how God explains the intricate details of creation, and like in itself is a proof, right? And then it shows right after those who idolize something else without any proof, like how silly they are, right? Like what a miserable Lord, what a miserable, because what they worship, first of all, has no proof, right? And not only that, they're more apt to harm them. It almost gives that juxtaposition where God proves himself through his creation and his examples. And then it shows how even Brother Suleman said, with that man who had these incredibly hypocritical thoughts and followed a companion and Lord that is only apt to hurt him. You know what I mean? Like, how can you believe in something that it gives proof? Like, God gives us proof through the Quran, through the mathematical miracle, through the messenger. And then these idol worshippers, these disbelievers, these hypocrites, they follow something that first of all, provides no proof, and second of all, is clearly only going to hurt them. It's kind of, it goes to the common thing that God always says, they're deaf, dumb, and blind, right?
Yeah, mashallah. And then, it's important to also reflect on perfect happiness. It says now and forever. God's promise that, once you are put through these things, that, there is a wonderful, wonderful reward that is there for us that we should be mindful of too, which is happiness now and forever. It's something that everybody's running for. Some people don't know what they want, but inevitably they all want to be happy in life. They can't buy it, they can't achieve it through any other means. and they can't see the big picture without being guided by God, because they're not guided. But they're all running, everybody's running towards it, wanting to be happy, but everybody's trying to get it in their own way based on what they think is going to get them there, right? And we know that only way to get to that point in life is through being a submitter and to submit to God under all circumstances, and that this is God's promise, this is God's guarantee, that, God says, sever your dependence on anyone or anything besides God. Anything that, is bothering you every day, every day there's something about that thing or that individual, or, that you are thinking about, and it is the measure of your happiness if that thing is going your way, or that person's happy with you, you're happy, or if, it's bad, then you're sad, so you gotta point out those things in your life and sever your dependence on them, and understand that, only God, you only need God in your life to make you happy, really. Other things are there, will be there, but what controls your happiness is God. And once we know that, once we realize that, God becomes our priority, then we focus on making God happy, right? Other people will be happy, or other things will be in our favor when God is happy with us, because God is the one who controls everything, right? God controls your spouse, He controls your coworkers, your boss, your neighbors, your enemies. So when you make God happy and you are set with God, then everything else is automatically going to fall into place, right? But if you're leaving God and you're trying to make these things, you're putting your focus on that, trying to make them happy, even if it goes against God sometimes, and we're neglecting that, then obviously things will never work out, and you will just be running, trying to get those things, and you'll just be miserable, right? This is a fact. But if you make God your God and you follow what God says and you pass the tests, passing the tests, by the way, is obviously not a piece of cake, but if you do pass it, and it's not a piece of cake because you read about the tests that the people went through, even messengers and prophets, and God says, they were shaken up, so, it's not something that you can just easily pass, like some people might think, yeah, it's just like a few things, you may have some days things may not be right. No. They're look at the tests that you see in the Quran, look at the examples. These are severe testing situations. So if you're really a submitter and you're serious about proving yourself to be a submitter and you go through these things, you passing them is not easy, right? Going to paradise is not easy. Of course, God makes it easy. God helps us, but we have to strive towards it and remember God and stick with God through those circumstances and do what God says, But when we do, obviously the prize is really worth it, right? It's an understatement, really, but it's worth all of that, right? To go through these things, to go through these trials, and to submit to God. And God even promises us that He will give us twice as many, right? As we see in the case of Job, He restored his family for him even twice as much. He lost everything, he had nothing, and then God gave him twice as much when he passed his test. So similarly, we can expect to be tested this way. As soon as we say we believe, we'll be put to the test. But when we pass it, then the rewards are literally endless. So we should remember that, because we need that encouragement, and we need that energy to keep us moving forward in the right direction, as we're going through the test, halfway through it, we don't want to lose hope, and we don't want to despair, or maybe we're just close to the finish line, and someone might fail. So we shouldn't be like that, and we should strive to continue. Of course, sometimes it might feel like it's not ending, the admissions test is not ending, or it's just been going on and on. But remember that inshallah, God says God's victory is near, and if you really strive, you push yourself, God willing, keep on the right path, be steadfast, and persevere. Eventually, with God's help, you will get there.
God willing, brother.
Yeah, yesterday, actually, it's funny that we read these verses about God's kingdom and stuff last night. I did a song too. God willing, it'll be in the next album, God willing, about God's kingdom. I sent it to John, I think, and Huda. But I'll share it with you guys too, God willing, on WhatsApp. I did a few variations of it, but yeah, it's something that I thought would be good to have as a reminder.
Yeah, mashallah, man. Like your album, I haven't even listened to all the songs, but my goodness, brother, like you could tell you spent your time. It's beautiful, beautiful. My kids, like I mentioned before, my kids love it. It's like on the way to school, they're like, "Hey, can we play that album?" I'm like, "Yeah, for sure, let's do it." Mashallah, it's very very good music, and it gives no excuse. Now you can listen to music and you can hear God's word, right? Like or praise at minimum, right?
Yeah.
Praise be to God. What a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Mashallah. I mean, it was one of my ideas. It's like that. For the young people, that listen to all this stuff, like they don't have, like, if a young submitter who has a very peculiar taste in music, may have a peculiar taste in music, wants to listen to anything, there's nothing there other than like maybe some like Christian artists. Maybe you still have to search for them, right? A lot of it is just yeah, you can still find it, but yeah, it's just all Christian stuff, and sooner or later they're gonna mention Jesus. So thank God,
yeah,
like,
no doubt.
We can listen to things that are relevant to us and things that remind us of the truth. Mashallah.
Well, I look forward to listening to more of it, brother. Like 38 tracks, that's a feat, man. That's a lot of work. Because just the songs I listen to, you can tell you put a lot of work into them.
So I loved it. Praise be to God. So it was easy for me. Praise be to God.
Praise be to God, man. Yeah, you can tell. Like, you can tell it was a labor of love, brother. So,
God makes it easy.
I think anybody... mashallah.
Yeah, I'll share it here also.
Yeah, but what a backwards guy you talked to yesterday.
Oh my God! Yeah, it was so ridiculously insane.
I was trying to text you like 5 times. I'm like, "Yo, man, run! This guy's different." Oh my gosh, brutal.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing, like.
Where'd you see him?
Huh?
Who was this guy? Like, where
this guy, I had talked to him about 5 years ago, and he was in one of those Facebook submitter groups, right? And I was commenting on someone's did some work on the mathematical miracle, and he joined in the conversation, and we started talking, and he was really looking deep into the mathematical code and talking to me, and I forgot about him. And then yesterday, then he saw me and he recognized me, and like he kind of forced himself into a conversation. Like I was trying to go into this channel called Meditation to maybe try to play some audios from the music album. And so he joined that channel and he started talking to me, So then I felt obligated. I responded to the conversation. We started having an audio discussion, and then he basically was apparently like from French origin, according to him, and then as he was researching the miracles, somehow he decided to become Jewish. And he knew the Arabic. He had memorized part of the Quran in Arabic, like 25%, he says. He had read all of the details about the mathematical miracle, and he was so deceptive. He was trying to be so nice in the beginning, and he was saying, "Oh, brother, yes, I know the miracle. I've read this, and I remember you." And he was being very sweet talking and everything, and then saying that, yeah, the miracle is. He was saying that was the deceptive part, saying, yeah, the miracle is true, and it says this, and Quran says this about us and this and that. But as we continue the discussion, I'm like, brother, like, let me be frank. It's like there's an elephant in the room. It's like you're saying the miracle is the truth, and then you're still Jewish. Like your profile picture, he has a black hat and black jacket and long beard and all that. So it's like there's an elephant in the room. Like, let me be frank, And so as we continue, first he's saying, yeah, it's the truth, and then he says, yeah, I don't believe Jesus is a prophet, and I don't believe Muhammad is a prophet, and I don't believe Quran is from God, and the miracle is true. I'm like, what are you saying? Like, and he's still trying to be, and I like submitting, and I like to come here, and I like to have a good time. And so eventually, like, I tried to give him some advice, and then he's like, oh yeah, like then he eventually said something along the lines of saying that, oh, you're like one of those traditional Muslims, like, okay, come on, brother, let's take the Shahada. I'm like, do you think that's really what I'm doing? I said, I'm trying to help you. And he says, yeah, and you want me to pray to the black stone or something, and then he left, the conversation eventually after about like maybe an hour, of conversation. I read to him all the verses, even, like I said in the study earlier, and he's like, yeah, he said, we don't understand the underlying meaning of these verses. Like, what underlying meaning could possibly be for the things that I read to him, like just, it was ridiculous.
It reminds me of the example that God gives, says sweet nothings, and then behind, he backbites, right? Like, conspires with his own devils. Oh no, we're really with you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and he was so clever. He even knew another person from Pakistan. Imagine, like, the Pakistani people in general, like, they hate the Jews, right? It's bred into them, like, from early on, like, Jews are bad. And he converted, according to him anyways, he says he has converted this Pakistani guy into a Jew. Imagine, and I'm just trying to imagine, like, it's the funniest
but
thing.
Brother, how much credence can you give the guy? He also said he believed the mathematical miracle.
Yeah,
and
he
then
says he believes
turned
mathematical
Jewish.
miracle. Yeah, no, but he says he believes the mathematical miracle is true, but then he says that he thinks that people he based on his nonsense that he's been brainwashed with, he says that people will come and they have miracles, but the miracles will be from Satan, So basically, no matter, it's like the verse that says in the Quran where God says, where the scholars tell them, if you are given anything else, don't accept it, right?
Yeah.
So it was that, it's just like, they will all come, and he believed Jesus performed miracles, but he was not a prophet. He believed Quran is the truth, Quran is a miracle, but it's not, so I'm like, it doesn't even make sense, right? And it's so hard to wrap your mind around that someone can be just tricked into the trap of Satan just like that, have given all these facts, obviously God knows what is in their hearts to led them in that direction. Eventually I blocked him, even though then he sent another nice note after that, you're so nice, or whatever he said, it's like all the way till the end he said of the conversation, and I expected nothing less. We're trying to be very clever, and I just blocked him eventually.
Yeah.
Apparently he tried to be a messenger too for people. I don't know why they still would have someone like that in their platform, but that's beyond me too. So
yeah, that's just cringy.
Yeah.
It's just the way. Yeah, I mean, you remember the messenger Rashad said about, like, the people who were coming to spy on, I think it's an audio 45 or 46. I want to say 46. towards the beginning, but they get so close, right? They presented the miracle, but he said it's going to be either the best night of their life or the worst curse ever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the case with this guy.
Yeah. And he told me.
It's different, you know, than somebody never getting it and ends up in hell. It's like, okay, well, they didn't have that. It's like you know, it's more abominable, I guess, to pass up something so great, and you know, it's more, I guess, despicable. Because like if someone offers you something so great, you like throw it out. It's like you would punish that person a lot worse.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he brought up circumcision. I'm like, don't talk about circumcision with me now. Even, you know. And then he's even justifying that, you know, like, so stupid.
Brother Abdullah, there is only one religion, one true religion, that's monotheism, and the followers of that are submitters. Anybody who divides themselves from that are disputing religions or sects.
Mm-hmm. I think he means like if you know anybody who came from a Jewish background and decided to become a submitter.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, my apologies, brother. I was thinking, I was like, man, you can't connect the two. This is religion a la carte, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I think I haven't met anybody. Yeah, I haven't met anybody. You know, once someone thinks they're a Jew, like you know, it's very difficult to get them to buy into anything else. It's like they're so brainwashed and feel they're so privileged and better than anybody else that they don't even, you know, they feel insulted to even look at something else. Like, you know, you have to be very fortunate. I mean, it does happen. It will happen. Not that it's impossible, but those will be, you know, very fortunate people too. Yeah, actually, I know one person who did become a submitter, but like I wouldn't say if they were like a really serious submitter. Like I would see them in Quran studies and stuff, and they said they were submitter, but I mean that's the extent of it, you know. And I think she died afterwards. I mean, she was an older lady here in LA. Yeah, but I'd only see her in like Quran studies, you know, not even Friday prayers.
Yeah. Well, that says something different too, right?
Yeah.
But,
right.
Right, like
more
Quran
like, I mean,
studies,
some people like the social thing, and they like the idea of like, you know, we're so tolerant of other religions and we get along with everyone and we come and join them to quote unquote have a good time.
Yes, well, God even says against that, like those who treat religion like a social function, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can't have one or the other. That's the whole idea behind submission. You adhere to the message.
Exactly. All right. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone? Any off-topic questions at this point also? We can talk about them. Anything, you know, don't hesitate. We can discuss. All right. So I guess if there are no comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our study. So thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless.